Originally, I accidentally tried to record it on the cloud when I wanted it on my computer. All right, guys. What are we up to? Lesson 4 or something like that. And we're just going to do a little bit of, just review what we've gone through so far and sort of hopefully clarify a few points. We're just going to try and keep this lesson nice and basic and just go over what we've gone through before. And I'll do that by, this is just the coding course EA we've been creating, nothing too exciting, but I'll just go through this from top to bottom and explain everything as we go along. And you guys on the call, most of you guys have got a pretty good understanding of most of this already, but if there's anything that crops up that you don't understand or that I explain in a strange way that doesn't make sense or that you think might need a little more clarification for people that are new to coding, just speak up and we'll go through it more. Otherwise, if I don't get a bit of feedback, I don't necessarily know what I need to talk about.
Just with those first few inputs there, Les, so obviously you've got like the numbers 100, 200.1 for lot size, RSI 30. So are they like fixed in the code then? For example, if you were to apply that to a chart, can you modify that number when you load it on?
So if I go to the back tester here, and so we've got the coding course EA input. It's a weekend, so it's a bit hard for me to put on a real chart, but it's the same on the back tester, which is one I want to talk about the back tester a fair bit anyway, because it's really vital in creating your code. So you can see it working in a bit of time-lapse type photography, so you don't have to wait for it on a real chart and see how it's playing out on the chart itself. And from that, you can decide what needs changing in your code. But on an EA, you've usually got that smiley face that you click on to get to the inputs and the settings. The other way you can do it is, I don't have one on there. You can right click and you'll have an option here that says expert advisors, and you can come across and select properties. That does the same thing. But on the back tester, if you click expert properties just here, it'll bring up your settings. And so we've got those variables you were talking about, Ben, that you can change. So, we can change the stop loss to 75. We can change the RSI. And that's what we do in back testing. We'd back test it on what we, think are reasonable sort of lot of settings and see how it plays out. And then we might change, like we just did, from 50 to 75, and then do some back testing and see if that improves performance or makes it worse. And you can just play around with it and see how you go.
Yeah, cool.
Answer to your question, I could have just said yes, but they're ones you can change.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you had to like name it as a variable or something like that.
So the input code here, that means it's a user input. So if you put input first, that's going to show up as something that the user can change in the settings.
Yep, cool.
And then like the magic number one I've put in here, I just haven't got input. I've just got integer. But if I wanted to, I could put input in there as well and compile it. And if we go back and check the properties now we can also change the magic number if we wanted to. So so that's what input does. If anything you want the user to be able to change, you put in just like that. Essentially, every line of code also needs to end in the semicolon. And this is, if you just delete, depends how much code you've got, but if I just delete that semicolon and try to compile it, I just removed one semicolon and now we're getting 5 errors out of it. And if this was a complete EA with several hundred lines of code, and you just remove one of them, sometimes that can give you like 50 or 60 errors just because you're missing one semicolon somewhere in all that code. Isn't that right, Aaron?
Yeah, definitely. And it can work the other way. You can think you've only got 2 errors, but once you fix that, then suddenly you've got 20, 30 errors.
And it's usually usually only one or two little things that like typos more than anything that are causing the issues too. What's that, Ben?
Just quickly, what's the difference between like defining the integer and the double? Like, what's
Yeah.
the main difference there?
All right, so yeah, we'll go through that too. So integer is whole numbers. So, we're not going to put in a stop loss of 100.2 points, so it's a whole number. So we use integer. Double, because it's got decimal places, it can't be an integer. If we made that an integer, we couldn't put in a decimal point. And obviously lot sizes need to be to 2 decimal places. RSI is also, well, you could put integer in for your RSI too, because you're not going to put a decimal in for an RSI value at all, really. The other ones you get are string. If you wanted to call something like, chart symbol, it could equal, and then you put it in quotes. If for some reason you wanted to set a variable called chart symbol to one specific, and you got to put a semicolon in, to one specific chart, you would use string, because this is words or letters, or a combination of letters and numbers and other special characters. So you got input whole numbers, double, decimal places. String is for actual words, let's call it. And the other main one is bool. And that's if you just wanted to set something to one of the ones I use in some of my code is just free to trade. So if certain conditions are met, you're going to set a variable called free to trade. You're going to set it to, to true or false. So I would use it here, and so bool can only return true or false. So if some criteria is met, free to trade will be false, or I set it at false to start with, and if certain conditions are met, that could change it to true. Not to get into that too much, but they're the main variables: integer, double, string for words, and bool just for a true or false return. That makes sense, guys?
Yep.
All right, so in the very first part of your code, this is generally where you'd put all of your user inputs. And then if there were other variables you needed to set or initialize, so what you can do is not a user input, but you still got to put integer. I might have some variable that I'm going to use in my code just called, I don't know, support. And you need to initialize that somewhere. You can just initialize it like that, so that now it knows that support's going to be a variable that's going to come into play. Or you can initialize it by actually giving it a value of something. Support, if you're using it as actual support, it's probably going to be to a decimal place. So you would need to use double, and support you could say 1.2. So you could be initializing the variable support to 1.2 at the start of your program, and then obviously in your coding somewhere support's going to change, and based off what I've called it, it's probably going to change based off where support falls on the chart. So anything that you just want to initially initialize originally, you can just all do in there as well. Coming down here to the on initialization. So any code that needs to, and I don't use this very much at all, but any code you want just to run anything in the on it between the two curly brackets of the on it section, it'll just run once initially when you put that EA on the chart. That's just going to run these once. So you could put some of these initialization things in here if you wanted to, but that code's only going to run once when you first initialize it, and you really can't access it again after that. The on de-initializing one, same thing, obviously, just when you remove it from the chart. that's just going to run once. And then say if you try to remove the EA from the chart, it's going to stop doing whatever it was doing. It's going to run the code in here and then remove itself from the chart. Also, I don't use this one a lot either, but one I do use a bit is object. So if you've created objects, I know we haven't talked about objects too much yet, but for you guys that are a little more advanced and have created objects like horizontal lines or letters, numbers, arrows, whatever, you can just try and remember how it works now. Object delete all. I think you just do it like that. That's not right. I'll have to check, but because I haven't really used it, I've put it in a couple of times. But you can just do object delete all. That's not quite the right syntax, but you can just tell it to delete all objects there. So some of my EAs originally, it would put the trends on, display the trends on the screens and some risk assessment, whatever it's displaying on the screen are objects. And then if I remove the EA from the chart, the EA would be gone, but all those objects would be just left behind. So to make that tidier, you can just have here to delete all objects. And so, if you remove the EA from the chart, it's going to delete all them. So that's just one use for deinitializing off the top of my head. Then we have the onTick function, which is most of your trade logic, so to speak, is going to go here. So you can also, like up the top here, we have put a user input for an RSI value. And then we've got an input here, which isn't a user input, just initializing that support variable. You can also down here and on tick, you can go double RSI. So we're initializing the RSI value to this down here as well. If I could remove the double from here and from here, but then if I tried to compile it, it's going to tell me that these are undeclared identifiers. That means that it doesn't know about these variables. Another way of doing it would be I could come up here. I'll get rid of that because I'm not using it, but I could go double RSI value, and I could go comma, and I could go previous RSI value. I think I spelt them right, and compile. The previous one needs a capital P. And now it would compile because originally I had the double part down here in the onTick, but once I removed it, it didn't know what RSI value and pre-RSI value were. So I've just initialized them up there. Does the same job, no difference. Just that down here now you don't need to put the double in. All right, so let's talk about what we've got here from our EA we've made so far. I just started. I think most people know what RSI is, the relative strength index. It's a bit of an indication that the market might go one way or the other. If like for example, if the RSI value is, which is what this is determining, goes above 80, it's a good indication that the market may go down. If the value was 20, for example, it's a pretty good indication that the market should sometime soon go up a little bit. And then this is our actual trade logic. So we've just assigned a value to RSI value and previous RSI value. And so the IRSI is an actual code in the MQL4 code. And it's just pulling in the value of the RSI from the indicators. Now, any any indicators that are here, all of these, can be pulled into your code. They all have a code word like IRSI that'll give you the value. I've just used RSI because it is a very simple one to understand, but you can do similar, if not almost exactly the same, with any of the indicators. And I'll just go through exactly what these variables inside the brackets are. So we're saying we want the RSI value of the current symbol that the chart that we have the EA on the current chart time frame that we have that chart on. We're going to want, so the RSI is an average value. We want the average of the last 14 candles, which is, you can change that to whatever you want, but 14 is the default, the stock standard for RSI. And we want to find the RSI value of all of that when that candle opens. So you could find, just halfway, that you can find that RSI value of the open price, the close price, the highest price, the lowest price, or if it's the current candle, it could be just the current time of that candle. And the 0 denotes that it is the current candle that we're on now. And then the previous RSI value is all exactly the same, except this one here, which is indicating the previous candle. So not the current one, the one before that. And then this is our trade logic. We're just saying that if, and whatever's in these brackets, if whatever's in these brackets is true, then it's going to place a buy order. And so this is some code that I've created, and that's down here on void place order. So when in the on tick, it comes here and it finds place buy order, it's going to jump down here and try and find all the code for place buy order, which is only a little bit, and it just places that order. So the logic inside the if brackets is, if the total number of orders, so orders total is a code word, and it's just going to give return a value of how many open orders there are, how many actual trades are open at the moment. And if there's less than one, meaning there's none open, and because we only want to open up one trade at a time, so that's one criteria. Another criteria is that the previous RSI value, so this line here, it needs to return a value less than RSI. And RSI is a variable that the user can change up here. And the user's, initially it's 30, but that can be whatever the user inputs. So we'll work on 30. So if the previous value, which is determined by that bit of code, so if the RSI value of the open when that second candle opened is less than 30, that's got to be true. And then the RSI value, so the current candle open price, needs to be greater than 30. So what that's meaning is that the RSI value has gone below 30 and then come above 30. So we're not just looking for the RSI to go below 30, we're waiting to see it turn around and start to come up again. So if that happens, then it's going to place a buy order. And so it's going to see buy order. It's going to come down here and try and find what that means. And it's going to place an order based off all of this criteria. So order send is the code word that's going to place an order. And it's going to do that by placing it on the current chart symbol. Just to be confusing, and I've never done this, and there's probably not too many reasons to do it, you could have all of this come true on the chart, which might be pound yen, and then you could tell it, because that happened on pound yen, you could tell it to place a trade on euro US if you wanted to. But so that's off the track a bit. But so order send, we want it to place a trade on the current chart. We want it to be a buy order, so that's the code saying that it's going to be a buy order. The size you want the trade to be. and lot size is a variable that the user can change up here. Sorry, the lot size, and it's just set to the smallest. Generally in an EA, I'll set the default for a lot size to be the smallest possible. That way, if you accidentally load an EA onto a chart, you've got all the allow live tradings turned on and it takes out a trade straight away and you weren't really ready for it to do it. At least it's only a little trade. So that's just a safety thing. So it's going to place it at whatever lot size the user inputs. It's going to place it at the, so this input here is asking for what price we want to place the trade at. And we want to place it at the current ask price. So with trading, you have the current market value is two things. You've got an ask price and a bid price. So ask price is basically if you want to purchase, if you want to place a buy order, you'll want it to be at ask price. So that's just the current ask price, nice and simple. This is slippage. So if the market, so from the time that EA says place this trade, if the market moves significantly more, which could happen during, like a red folder news event or something, if it moves more than 3 points, it's not going to place the trade. So that's just a little safety. You can have it at 0 if you don't care, or you can have it higher if you want to. I'm just saying that if it moves more than 3 points, don't place this trade, because you might tell it to place a trade at this level. I know you can't see my hands, but if you might tell it to place a trade at this level, but before it can do it, the market might move, 20 pips further up. So you're going to place a trade nowhere near where you originally wanted it to. So that's why we have the slippage option in there. And then we're going to place the stop loss and the take profit. So the stop loss and the take profit, you can tell because they're red, but they are a user input variable, stop loss and take profit. So what it's asking for here is the actual currency value that you want the stop loss at. So it's not asking for like 20 pips. It's asking for, you might have the trade might be placed at 1.2. You might want the stop loss at 1.3 of what, it's going to be different depending on the chart you're on. But so like on Euro USD, you might have a trade placed here at 1.09 and the stop loss, which might be 10 pips, but the order send is asking for the market price. So you're going to want the trades at this price, but you want the stop loss at this price. So that's what it's asking for. So I just went through that because you can't just put stop loss in or 100 points in here because it's not what it's asking for. So we're going to say we want it, the ask price, as we mentioned here, is the current ask price, which would be, 1.09. So we're going to, or whatever the ask price is. So we're saying we want the stop loss at the ask price minus the stop loss. But we need to make sure it understands that the stop loss is in points. So we multiply it by underscore point. Now and their number of points or the value of a point can change from one currency pair to another. So if you just do underscore point, it'll understand that the stop loss is actually in points. So all of this code right there is just saying to place a stop loss at your stop loss value that the user input, which is 100 in this case. So it's just saying place a stop loss 100 points below, because it's a buy order, below where the trade is. And then the same for the take profit, except we're placing it, we've got it instead of like here, it was ask price minus stop loss. We need the take profit to be the other way. So it's ask plus take profit times underscore point.
When I was having my first play around with one of these order send functions, it took me ages to wrap my head around that ask minus stop loss, ask plus take profit, because I kept just putting in just stop loss, just take profit, and then I
Yeah.
was getting all sorts of problems.
Yeah, no, that's sort of why I went through that, because I figured that was a point that new people would not quite understand. I mean, some of the code, you can just copy some of the code and have it in there and have it work, but not really understand how it works, and that's fine. And I'm probably sure that's how we all start off. But it is good to understand why that needs to be like that. And then the last variable here, we're just setting a color for the, like, you don't have to put this in, but if you do put a color in here, it's going to place an arrow where that trade's placed, which is just sometimes handy to know exactly where it ended. And so that's all order send does.
Can you have a different, sorry, can you have a different color for the take profit and different color for the stop loss?
For the lines,
Yeah, when it shows up on the chart during the testing. So you've
I don't think so, no. I could be wrong. I've never looked into it, but I don't think so. If you find out otherwise, let me know. I won't get into the trailing stop loss coding too much, because it is a little more advanced. We actually went through that in a little bit before we recorded this call for the guys that understand a bit more. But just so you know, we'll do a little bit of back testing before we call it quits on this call. So remember how I was saying in our on tick section, it's calling up our trade logic. It's asking for these three things to be true before it places a place buy order. So whatever comes true in those brackets for the if statement, then it's going to do whatever's in these curly brackets, which is placed by order. So it's going to find out what that means, which is here, and it's going to place that by order. Avoid apply trailing stop one. It's just, I think most people understand what a trailing stop loss is, but this is the code to make that happen. And without going into it, what we would need to do is to make it actually work. We've got the code there for it, but we haven't told this EA to use it yet. So what we would do is here somewhere after it's placed orders, just or anywhere really, we would say apply trailing stop, but we don't. I've just copied what it says here, but that's not the exact format it wants. It wants the symbol. So we would want, we would put in the current chart symbol, and we'd put in the magic number, and the magic number we've input up here. So whatever this is the magic number we're going to put in. So instead of all that, we would just put in the magic number we want. And then the stop loss is going to be the user input stop loss here. So that's how that's what we'd put in to call the apply trailing stop loss section of code. And so it's going to use a symbol, and it's got to initialize it here as well. That's why the string's there. And then the magic number, but it's got to initialize it inside the apply trailing stop loss code. That's why the integer's there. So it's going to be initializing a string for whatever you input first, which is just the current chart symbol. It's going to initialize an integer of whatever input you put in after the second. Like say you've got one input, comma, two input, comma, three inputs. So the first input will go here, second input here, and third input here. And because this one's going to be a chart symbol, it's a string. This one's a whole number, so it's an integer. And this one's a stop loss, which, because it's converting, like the stop loss of the user inputs is a whole number, but because it's going to use it here to calculate the actual value that the stop loss is going at, it's going to be a double, because it'll be in the case of Euro USD, it's going to calculate the stop loss value, which is 1.09218. So that's a double because it's got decimal. And then, of course, we need the semicolon there. And hopefully that should compile still. Good. I'm a little dubious because I'm not the most expert coder. So usually when I type in a bit of code, I'll get a few errors and I've got to fix those up first. So when I'm recording a lesson on it, it's good to see it work straight up. So now we've got code that will place a buy order. And we would do, I won't worry about it on this call, but we could do exactly the same here, but with opposite values, basically. We have an input of value for a high value of RSI, but you could do exactly the same and have placed sell order as well. So if the RSI value, in this case, if the RSI value goes down and then back above 30, it's going to place an order. We could do another one that if it went above 70 and then back down, it would place a sell order. So it'd just be the same code, but down here we'd have to set up a void for place sell order, which would be almost the same, but just a sell order instead of OP buy. And then it could do trade both ways. But for now, always, if you've changed code, you've always got to compile before you can backtest it, because otherwise it hasn't saved the new code to the execution file. And also you'd need to do it to make sure that you haven't made any errors. But then we can go to the backtester and we'll do some backtesting and have a look. So in our expert properties, originally we'll set the stop loss at 50 and the take profit at 100, the lot size at that. And with the backtester, you can select the time frame and you can select the spread. So if you select the current spread, it's going to use whatever spread that broker has at the moment. But you've got to be careful because if you're doing some back testing, like say, for example, the first hour of the market open every day, this spread is going to be huge, which is going to mess with your results. So you're probably better off just selecting a spread that's roughly what that chart symbol usually is. And so I'm just using 2 because that's what it is now. Euro USD usually has a much smaller spread than most pairs because it gets traded more. But yeah, so whatever spread you're going to enter, you really want to check. So if we were using pound yen, I would just use 20, for example. But some of the more exotic pairs, like US 30, its current spread's 155, so completely different as well. So you have to be aware of what the spreads are so that you can have some setting here that's suitable. All right, so generally I would just, hang on a sec, what I should do is add the RSI indicator to this chart. Set those at 70 and 30 because we have 30 input at the moment. So we'll be watching this, and if this chart, the trade logic to enter a trade for this EA, so this RSI indicator here has to go below this line, which is 30, and then back above it, and then it will place a trade. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we should see it place a trade if that happens. It plays out. Oh, hang on. I needed to save this template, save it, and call this template tester. That way it'll apply that template, which will include the RSI indicator every time it brings up a chart for back testing. So this time we'll see it brought up the RSI indicator. It's also got this from before because I just saved it as a template, but just ignore that for now. I'll speed it up a bit until we get a trade. So we can see the RSI indicator's gone below 30. As soon as it comes back above 30, it should place a buy order. So it did eventually, but it must have just been not quite enough. But so it's a bit messy because we had this from previously. But we can see it's placed a buy order, and it's placed a stop loss and a take profit. And then it's hit the stop loss. This trade logic's not perfect, it's very, very basic. But it's placed another buy order and it's hit the stop loss again. But now, you know, we're not opening up any more trades until it goes below and then above again. So the visual mode is good just to see that it's doing what you expected it to from your code. But then if we'll stop it and then back test with visual mode over a longer period of time takes too long. So I'll get rid of the visual mode. And then we just need to select some time to test it from. I'll just do from the 1st of September until today. So October, November, December, January, so, you know, 4 months. And we'll see how that works for us. I'll just click on graph and it'll just show us a graph of the wins and losses. Doesn't seem to be doing anything. I don't know why it's not doing anything. Change the dates. All right, now it's working. And you can see that our strategy hasn't been very good. We've lost money. Now, if we have a look at the report, we've lost $1,000, which is what I would expect from not a very good strategy like we've got. But if we come back into properties, and now we're going to play with these settings to see if we can improve that performance. And one way I do that would be to change the RSI to, let's go 25. That means it has to be more undersold before it would trade. And so last time we had 175 trades. This time, because we need the RSI to go much lower or a little bit lower, we shouldn't get as many trades. So I would expect we would probably still lose money, but we'll lose less and we'll also have less trades. Let's see if that's true. Okay, so instead of 175 trades, we only had 92, and we only lost $710 now. So we've improved, and that's what it's all about. You would never expect some code to make you heaps of profit straight up. You'd have to tweak it a bit, and that's what we're doing with the use of the backtester. So we're still losing money, but we've lost less. So we're on the right track.
Can you try half-hour or 1 hour time frame? Just out of curiosity.
Yes. So all right, let's just leave it at that. We lost $710 and we had 92 trades. Generally, you find if you go higher in the time period, you'll get a more accurate result. So let's go to the 1 hour. We'll get less trades, but hopefully more accuracy. Oh, we made money. Well done, Ben. So we've made $9 this time, but we only had 30 trades. And that's just changing the time frame. If we went down to the 1 minute and tried to do it, also not a good strategy, although we didn't. Still better than the other one. Let's just go up to the 4 hour and see if we can make more than $9. We won't get very many trades, but only got 7 trades. And the problem with the 4 hour was that we just weren't getting enough trades. So it looks like the 1 hour is our best option just there. And that's where we made $9. We could tighten up the criteria more. Now the RSI has to go to 20. Nope, no good. And, I would say that's also mostly because we weren't getting enough trades. So we'll go back to 25 because that was the best that we had. And now we can start playing with the take profits and stop losses. So we'll put the stop loss at 100. So that gives the market more room to maneuver before it comes into profit. That could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. The back tester will tell us. It was a bad thing. So we've lost money again. Some strategies, a risk to reward, a positive risk to reward ratio between take profit and stop loss works better. Sometimes, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. It'll depend on the strategy. But in this case, we might try making the take profit a little bigger so that all our profits are a bit bigger. That may mean that we miss some of the take profit lines as well, though. So it might not necessarily work in our favour. But we'll back test that and see how we go. So not as good. We're still trying to beat a $9 profit. And you can just keep tweaking it. And depending on what pair you're on, so like Euro US, not particularly volatile. So you wouldn't want your take profits and stop losses too far away for a strategy like this. If we were trading, let's say pound yen, we could probably have larger amounts of profit. So going up to 125 with worth, let's go a little bit lower than our initial 100, and then that might actually be better because we might hit the take profit more. No. So that was still a loss. So our best was at 100. Go a little above. And that's all it is. Once you've got your basic code there, you need to tweak those settings to suit. I mean, you can also tweak the code itself and bring in obviously a lot more trade logic than what we have here now. I think we're just going to have to stick at 100. And so for this extremely basic and pretty poor trading strategy, it looks like the best results we're going to be able to get. What have I changed here? Why aren't we?
I think we're on 30 for the RSI maybe before.
And it's on that note, when you're doing this back testing and you're constantly changing settings to try and find the best tweak, it is a very good idea to write down or keep a track of what settings produce what results. Otherwise, like now, I'm trying to get back to our big $9 profit and I've forgotten exactly what the settings were. So I'm not quite
Not
sure.
bad.
Not quite sure what we've changed, but it doesn't really matter. You get the idea. The whole idea was just to show you how we use the back tester to initially on visual mode to make sure the trade logic is working correctly, and then without the visual mode so we can tweak the actual settings. But anyway, so it looks like our anyone would have to admit it's a poor trading strategy and there's not much code to it, so it's not expected to make much profit. So probably the best we can do as it is at the moment is that $9 profit over that 4-month period. Another thing I like to do on the back tester is have a look at, the big, when you take a loss, it's a $29.50 loss. So this is a $10,000 account. So that's only, 0.3% risk per trade. Just so you know, like if you wanted to risk 1% per trade, you could, triple your lot size. So the results section just lists every single trade and the result. But anyway, that's pretty much it for today, guys. We'll leave it at that, and hopefully that clears up a few little points on those basic bits of code and how an EA is actually structured. And if all of you guys, I was going to say if you can watch this video, but there's no point saying that because it's at the end of the video. But yeah, hopefully that'll help out those new guys a little bit, and we can get a little more technical next week or on Tuesday. I guess the next one will be Tuesday.